Hey there, gang. I thought I would put some thoughts out here for you to think about and share my impressions and ideas after getting, I think we got 9 turns out of the 15 done. And I'm talking about Hannut, sorry. So, 1940 magazine game out of Joe Youst's GOSS system. It's GOSS Lite. We'll use that in parentheses. It's a Decision Games magazine game from World at War, the October-November edition. I was thinking about why did they make this game and what was the idea behind it and the purpose. And obviously part of the purpose was to try and distill the rules down and give us a better feel for the GOSS system, so that perhaps you might get excited about it and go out and buy a bunch of copies, or actually play the ones you own, maybe. I don't know. So I think if that was the goal, I think this game probably does that about 80% of the way there, gets you almost there. It there are still I found challenges with this rule book that for a game that's supposed to be leading me into a far more involved and complex system, there were enough little gotchas in this and wording nuances and confusing elements that it sort of detracted a little bit from the experience. Now, with that said, repetition is your friend here. You can, starting out, and I've shown you how to do these combats or how I did them anyway. Run through a combat, doing the column adjustments, doing the DRM adjustments, getting that down. You can pick that up and it can happen reasonably quickly. The good news here is, unlike some other larger, more complex games, there's no percentile, fractional stuff where I'm taking a percentage of a combat factor, or I'm looking at a marker underneath the combat unit going, oh, well, it's taken 2 step losses, so I've got to take 20% of the combat factor off and do some math and all this sort of stuff, and then do the odds, and then do the column shifts, and then do the DRM. So this combat resolution exercise became much quicker as we got along. Once you familiarized yourself with the unique and specific wording to this system and how Joe or Joseph, I think he likes to go by Joe, but it looks like Joe Youst does, words his rules. So that worked. And for me, I think this has got me to the point where, let's just cut to the chase, where I would probably now be okay pulling out a larger module and maybe setting a medium-sized scenario up. Maybe having a look at a larger. I'm one of these days, I'll actually just leave the camera alone and not dick with things. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of a look at some of the bits if you haven't seen them already. So yeah, I think it would get me to the point where I would want to pull out the full GOSS, have a look at it, maybe play with a friend or someone who knows how to play. Those two terms are not necessarily mutually exclusive, but if I can find someone who I know that likes the system and wants to work with me on it, I'd probably be pretty interested in that. Alternatively, I would be happy just to set it up and kind of grind through it solo, given that now I understand the movement mechanics, some of the combat mechanics, and I'm sure there's a lot more to it when it comes down to all of the artillery and supply and special rules and core boundaries and army boundaries and things of that nature. I get it. It's a lot more involved than it's not. I don't believe this is a nice, easy transition from light to heavy or from light to actual. It's a familiarization with combat and movement, and maybe the command track stuff. I don't know how that all works in real GOSS, because I know that we're abstracting here the artillery and the air capabilities and stuff like that, which is not done in full GOSS. So now the thing I liked the most about this was a lot of the flexibility that the French had in their defensive choices. It wasn't the typical sit behind a stream or a river and get a defensive bonus necessarily. Obviously, sitting in rough or in points of interest, I think these are what these are called, vantage points. Then these would give you some column shifts and modifiers, but it really was: am I in an improved position? Do I have supporting units? Do I have reserve units that can jump in and support my defense? And for the attacker, given that you had a limited number of prepared attacks that you could run in a given turn, you can't just attack everything in a turn. It allowed you to really have to think, or it forced you, I should say, to think, where am I going? What am I trying to do? How am I going to do it? What are my options to do that? And it gave you that, it led you through a thinking exercise that felt a little bit more akin to making informed decisions, as I would imagine a commander in the military might make, or if you're running a division, right? Now, I'm not one and haven't been one, so I'm sure it's nothing like it, but that's kind of what I felt like. I think from the commander's viewpoint, it gave me that vibe. So that's pretty cool. So that's what I liked the most about the game, was the actual tactical thinking about how to apply the resources that were at my disposal most effectively to maximize the benefit of my attack or my defense. And that includes, working out, getting the most armor shifts, putting artillery shifts on the enemy, both attacker and defender. So the sequence of play is interesting from that perspective as well, because there's a lot of artillery barraging that goes on before the actual combats, and that can impact both sides, both attacker and defender. So lots of that type of activity and action going on. So I enjoyed it. So net it all out after 7 minutes is to say, I believe that this fulfilled about 80% of its goal. I enjoyed it enough that I'm actually, I'm going to keep the game. I was going to put it in baggies, but I decided to leave it in the tray to keep it organized, so that I can pull it out again and play it again at some point in the future, because I think this would be a interesting game to play with someone who's played a few war games and who's curious about learning something more in depth. Now, I'm not talking about jumping from SCS, from Multi-Man Publishing, to this, but certainly if you've played a few war games and you want something more robust and interesting, but approachable, you could do that. And you could do it even more easily if the rules were cleaned up, and the wording was more precise, and there was, less very important notes. So that's Hannut. We'll get this packed up, put it in a Ziploc bag, and put that puppy away. And we will talk to you soon. I'll show you what's up next in the next video. Ciao.